losing weight gradually, continuously over a period of time is much better than rapid weight loss. The reason is our metabolism, the way that our body uses up energy, basically slows down as a mechanism of survival.
Dr. Stephen Jones, a board-certified general surgeon, brings cutting-edge knowledge of GLP-1 agonists like semaglutide to his approach in weight loss management, helping patients achieve long-term success.
You going out and having yummy foods is healthy to do that sometimes.
The science-proven way to lose weight without surgery is a calorie deficit.
If the focus is just weight loss, then it's like, okay, what matters is just taking in less calories. But if my focus is optimal health and longevity and well-being, but I'm thinking more intentionally about what those calories are and how they're feeding my body, not just if they're creating loss of weight in my body.
There are some practical tips that I do want to share with everyone. One.
Hello and welcome to the Invigor Medical Podcast. We're so stoked to be back in our new studio again with in-person guests.
Oh, yeah. It's the best.
It really is the best. It's so much fun to have like face-to-face here. We have our very own Dr. Jones.
Hello,
I told you
everyone.
I can't do it without saying that way. I just have to say it, Dr.
feel
Jones.
like-
That must get annoying for you though.
You know what?
I can't be the only one.
I hear that probably 10 times a day.
Yeah.
Dr. Jones, Dr. Jones. Have you seen that movie? Of course I've seen it. Everybody's seen that
Everybody's
movie.
seen it.
It's great.
Earlier, I was just like, I feel like the Indiana Jones villain. Dr. Jones, I am here. You are going to have to sit in this seat.
Yeah.
We're going to interrogate you.
I'm glad you did the impression. That was important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, then we also have one of our founding fathers over here at Invigor Medical, Mr. Jon Colson in the chair, which is super fun. I've never talked to you at all on the podcast. Like we're always outside of the studio chit-chatting. So really fun to have you be a part of it in this circle. Yeah. Tell us a little bit. Let's start with Dr. Jones.
Sure.
I want people to know who you are and what you do and why you're a part of our team now.
Yeah. So again, I'm the infamous Dr. Jones. Yeah, I am. I'm in Tampa. I live in Tampa, so I'm out here visiting the beautiful state of Washington. Happy to be here and happy for the invitation, and the Invigor family everyone has been so welcoming. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak with everyone.
We're stoked to have you.
I am a general surgeon by trade. I do a lot of surgery. I do some weight loss surgery. I've spent a lot of time, counseling people and talking about kind of their weight goals and getting them over the hump with surgery. And of course, now with all the different medications that are out there, things are starting to pivot. We're starting to see some different ideas out there. So it's been a nice, welcoming change, and I am looking forward to the future. And what a perfect place to do this around people who are very like-minded and who have all these different medications that are out there that can aid in this. So it's truly is a pleasure for me to be here.
Yeah, we're super stoked to have you.
Yeah.
And Jon, as a founder of Invigor Medical, you've been in this for a long time, and maybe we can dive right into the conversation of what we're having. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about how you essentially why you founded Invigor, and then we can just dive right in.
Well, I'll do the short story.
Yeah.
So I started as a personal trainer years ago, and at a point, I opened up a weight loss clinic here in the Tri-Cities, and so I, with my background, I basically was helping people lose weight through. We had different medications and stuff, but for the most part, I was sitting down counseling people, and going over what they're eating, and it was kind of life-changing for me because I gained a kind of a care for people who are going through that, My dad passed away a couple years ago, and he was overweight, and that was, that's always been part of my life is fitness, and for better or for worse with how my dad took care of himself, he's an awesome guy,
Amazing guy.
Amazing person,
awesome.
And everyone here kind of knows him. Yeah. He was like the father of Invigor,
Yeah.
But yeah, he died because mostly he was overweight. He had a heart attack that killed him really quick. And so, my whole life I've kind of like cared about that stuff. But when I worked with heavy people, it has a place in my heart because those people, I've heard a lot of bad things said about people who are overweight, and you meet a lot of overweight people who are amazing. Like they're hardworking. Some of them are extremely successful. And can be just as great as anyone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In almost every way, but struggle with that, Mm-hmm. So over time, the business kind of grew, and eventually we started Invigor Medical, which started as a men's clinic, and then grew into what it is now, to where we help people with a lot of different kinds of conditions. So,
Yeah, tens of thousands of patients that we've helped
Yeah.
over the years, which has been an absolute pleasure to be able to work with you on this, which is awesome.
I was just thinking with you saying, like, I've often thought before with people that have always struggled with weight. I myself have lost over 50 pounds 3 times in my life, pregnancy, et cetera.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Right. But what you said about, like, the people who are struggling with obesity, and they're this and they're that and they're all these things. And I just had this thought pop in my head that it's like, it's just that the thing they're struggling with most, well, maybe arguably most, but in a large way, is more visible, because we're all walking around with something.
Yeah,
We
for
just,
sure.
some of us are lucky enough that the thing that we're struggling with that we would be judged for is easy for us to hide.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're struggling with obesity, and sometimes it's patterns and habits that are built in when you're so young, and depending on how your parents taught you and what they fed you, I mean, it starts a chain effect early on, not just the habits and the neural pathways that are formed and what's normal and habitual in your family life, but also genetically what starts to change in their muscles, their digestive system, leaky gut, all of these things that start, and it's an uphill battle. And I think that it's really awesome when I meet someone in the health and fitness industry who has a lot of empathy for that experience and for that struggle, because a lot of times the people who are coaching and training in the health and fitness sphere have never had to experience what it feels like to feel trapped in this struggle want to do and feel better. I mean, I'm guessing you've probably experienced that in your practice.
I experience it all the time. It's interesting that you say that. I mean, a lot of what I do in every day is, I deal with a lot of, people who have issues with a lot of different things. Gallbladder is one of the big things. And typically we find people who have issues with gallbladders, they're typically overweight. Mm-hmm. And people ask me all the time, well, I had my aunt, she had her gallbladder removed. My mom had her gallbladder. So I knew it was just a matter of time before I had my gallbladder removed. And they asked me, well, is there some sort of genetic predisposition to gallbladder? And really the answer is no, there's not. However, what we find is that people who are from the same families, they tend to eat the same way.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times, these patients, they're going to eat whatever they were passed down, and they're going to pass that down to their families. And then, lo and behold, they're going to be overweight, or they're going to end up seeing me for, having their gallbladder removed. So, that's very, very commonly seen. So I'm glad that we have the opportunity to kind of discuss this and talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. I think this is a awesome start to this episode. We kind of wanted to touch into the fundamentals of losing weight and some of the very common things that people try to do to lose weight, right? So in my mind, probably the biggest thing, the most notorious phrase kind of in the field is calories in, calories out, right?
Yeah.
Eat less, move more. And that statement has a lot of baggage to it.
It does.
Maybe we can talk about it. It's a lot more complicated than that, right? Yes and no, actually. It is and it isn't. So maybe we can dive into that a little bit more. And can you shed a little bit of light of, like, is it really that simple?
Yeah. No. Obviously, the quick answer is no, for sure. If it was that simple, it was like everything else. I mean, everyone would be doing it, of course, Everybody struggles, like you mentioned before, with something. And if it was just as simple as, do this thing, take this, eat this, then again, we would have no obesity. I think it's important, though, that we do kind of talk and touch a little bit on the fact that, weight loss in general, there is a scientific reason for weight loss. And it's important that we don't get lost in, I want to look a certain way, with weight loss. So it really, really is important that we talk about the way that weight loss should be done. And it should be done for preventing obesity and the complications of obesity. Yeah. Because that's really how you're going to get to a place where you can maintain a healthy weight and live a more healthy lifestyle. So.
I think I'm sorry, John, I didn't mean to cut you off, I was just thinking as you were talking, and I've thought about this before, is there's just like such a hyper focus in our society on weight and weight loss. And I think that we've maybe really done ourselves a disservice because there's such the focus on that. And I got to see the scale move, and I got to move this fat. And I'm like, even myself in the last few years have started trying to shift mentally, because that's a hard hill to keep climbing of just like, what's my weight? How do I lose weight? And so now I'm like trying to switch it more to like, how do I gain health instead of lose weight? How do I feed my body so that it can operate at the highest and best level versus like lose weight so I can be better. Does that make sense a little
Yeah.
bit?
Yeah,
How
totally.
can I work out and move so that I can live with more health and vitality in my older years? All of those things are kind of what I'm thinking about, because if we're just like, how do I lose weight? How do I make the scale go down? How do I get rid of this fat? It just feels so negative to me. I mean, I tend to like want positivity in my life, and it's kind of my curse. And so sometimes I'm like, ew, that's gross. I don't like it. And it's negative.
Right.
But I do also wonder, as you're talking, it's kind of in the back of my mind, how much of the way that we're framing this problem is actually contributing to the problem instead of helping offer a solution.
Yeah, that's such a good way to like look at it, you know, because it's like at the end of the day, you know, like losing weight might be the thing that's healthy for people, but if you're doing it in a pathological way, if like the mental approach you're taking with it is pathological, like the end result is you're going to be miserable. And
Right.
like,
Well, if because I want you to speak on this
Yeah.
too, but the reason I kind of started thinking on this was calories in, calories out, and this is a perfect example to kind of, I think, and what I'm talking about, right, on the loss, is because it's like, if the focus is just weight loss, then it's like, okay, what matters is just taking in less calories. But if my focus is optimal health and longevity and well-being, then I'm thinking about the number of calories I'm taking in, but I'm thinking more intentionally about what those calories are and how they're feeding my body, not just if they're creating loss of weight in my body.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's sort of like I've been involved with, you know, bodybuilding and physique stuff and things like that, and it's actually one of the more unhealthy fields to be in if you do it. You know, because those people get very like, it's very focused on rapid results towards a certain goal, and if you get into that world, because I was in that world a little bit, not like actually doing bodybuilding shows, but you know, wanting to be ultra fit and stuff. You get into this mindset of like, I need rapid this, I need rapid that, and the choices you make kind of go with that, and they aren't as healthy, you know. And so it's taken me like probably the last 10 years to get to a place from there where it's more about like, what am I doing today? What can I improve slowly, right? I think one interesting thing you said was like, you went from this like, what do I need to take away to what should I be doing?
Yeah. What
You
can I
know?
add?
What can I add
What can
to my
I
life?
give to myself? What can I add? Because
Yeah.
we get stuck in this pattern of like negativity, like take this away, take that away. And like every book or TED Talk or whatever, or podcast that I've listened to about building in habits, healthy habits, is, you know, says things like, you know, try to stay away from, my habit is I'm going to not smoke.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to break, like it's not that those things aren't helpful and beneficial, but it's all negative. So it's like having a mindset shift of what can I add that's helpful and healthy and going to get me, you know, help get me to the place where I'm, you know, reaching for those larger goals.
Yeah.
For me, real quick, for me, like I love to eat at night. I think I'm like a lot of people out there, right? Night comes and I'm sitting around watching a show or something, and like I'm snacking, and half the time I probably don't even know I'm snacking.
Yeah, right.
It's like,
Especially if it's wintertime.
what how'd this end
Oh
up
my
in
gosh.
mouth? You know, what's
I
going
mean,
on?
summertime ice cream, like
Yeah.
that's
So
what's that.
as an example of like I started taking walks at night and listening to books, right, on my headphones, and yeah, that's like you have to replace if you're gonna
Yeah.
take something out, you need to replace it with something
Yes.
else. So I just started doing that, and man, it was also awesome to like I'm taking walks at night when it's dark. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
It's
This
also
dude
really
walking
cool,
around.
though.
Yeah.
It is, but there's this like cool solitude where I would also turn my headphones off sometimes and was just thinking and like going over things and for my day and kind of in a way grounded me. I had my shoes on. But no, I don't know. We don't want to get into that.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, we won't
That's
go
a
down
whole
that
other
road.
episode. Grounding's a whole other
but
episode.
yeah, that's. I think you're right on with that.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I agree. I think you hit the nail, right on the head with that one. I mean, us as Americans in general, we get so obsessed, like you said, with seeing the scale move or seeing, hey, I have to lose this amount of weight in this time to make this event, that we forget the real benefit of, you know, health and well-being. And it encompasses everything. It's not just a number on the scale. It's our bodies, it's our mind, it's our spirits. You know, it encompasses everything. And we get so focused on the kind of the wrong things that it becomes more of a restrictive pattern as opposed to something that can ultimately lead us to where we, you know, want to go. So I think the first thing is that we need to make that shift You know what I mean? We need to shift the way that we look at health and wellness, and it all stems from our mindset. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's part of why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Start the conversation.
Yeah, mindset is incredibly important. So, but let's say that someone that has a good mindset. They're like they're giving themselves enough latitude and grace, and they realize that like I am in a spot where I do need to lose some weight.
Yes.
That is going to be the best long-term thing for us. Because and really, this is such a common problem, right? You look at America, you look at the obesity crisis that we're in, the obesogenic environment we live with, the hyperpalatable foods. I think you said that last time when I was talking to Dr. Hamilton as well.
I like big
but
words.
I love it. But really, it's just like it is so easy to get fat.
Yeah.
In our country, like it just is. Like you can, I saw this graph from this group that I love, XKCD, where it's like a graph where it's like my overall health, and then it like tips, and at this point it's like the moment I realized I could buy bacon anytime I wanted, or like I could just go and buy and eat an entire cake anytime that I want. And it's just like, when you think about it in those terms, it's comical when we talk about it.
Well, it's literally what I experienced moving out of my parents' house when I was 18. Because I grew up in a house, third oldest of 11 kids. And, we were all homeschooled. So you can imagine the crunchy granola kind of mom I was. Like the food co-op, Unfi semi-truck delivery happened at our house. People came and picked up the goods at our house. So, props to my mom. Thanks to her. And talking about breaking generational cycles on like how we cook and eat. My mom did that. Thanks, Tammy. But the other thought of that being like, I get out on my own, and I'm like, shoot, I go to McDonald's anytime I want.
Yeah.
I can buy 12 packs of Coke and put them in the fridge. I can do, so when I say I've lost over 50 pounds 3 times in my life, I've only had 2 kids. The other time was when I moved out of the freshman 15, my ass.
Yeah. That makes you wonder. That makes you wonder too, like if the environment you had, because you can grow up in a more restrictive environment, and then what happens when you get out of it, right? Yeah. Because you going out and having yummy foods is healthy to do that. Sometimes you need to like take a break, and you need to be able to do it without feeling cruddy about it.
Well, that's something that me and John actually like to do on our lunches. Is I've looked up a whole bunch of different options of fast food that are like, actually for macros and calories, this isn't bad. And so like, I'll go to Taco Bell every once in a while and get the chicken quesadilla because it's got decent macros and protein to calorie ratio. It's like, this is awesome. Right. So but I think that with that being said, I think like, I just want to put this out there that the only way to lose weight is to be in a calorie deficit, period. Like either that, I guess there's another way, which is surgery. Like you can literally have liposuction, or you can have a limb chopped off. There's some ways, right? But like really, like the most common way, and really the science proven way to lose weight without surgery is a calorie deficit.
Correct.
But with the mindset intact, how do we actually healthily go about doing that?
Yeah. Yes, I'll answer that, but I do want to take a step back and just go off of something that I think someone mentioned earlier. In medical school training, we get so fixated and we talk so much about disease processes and fixing disease process and all that, but the preventative side of all of this is really the key. I remember, I think we had maybe a 1 hour lecture on nutrition. My whole entire medical education, which is crazy to think about because the food that that we take in and all that has everything to do. Yeah, food is medicine, exactly. And I remember very clearly we had a gentleman come in and talk about nutrition, and he mentioned bagels. And why this comes up now is funny, but
I love bagels, by the way.
Yeah,
I do love bagels.
He mentioned bagels back in 1950. The size of a bagel was 3 inches.
What?
It was like 3 inches. I had a bagel like last week. It was like the size of a plate.
Huge.
Oh my gosh.
Huge.
And it's like they're like, bagel, healthier option than donut.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
So much more calorie dense.
Exactly.
So many more carbs.
Yeah, so when you just think about, where we came from, 60, 70 years ago to now, the portion size and everything, it makes it very difficult to get to what you're talking about, having that calorie deficit, because you eat one bagel from Einstein's or wherever, and you're already like half of your calories for the, for the day after eating one bagel, let alone adding a little bit of cream cheese or whatever it is you like on the bagel.
Which who eats a bagel plain?
Like, exactly.
Communist, I think.
So you have to think of food as like it's an investment you're putting into your day, right? Because like you want to have good food, but you'd rather have a donut maybe if you're looking for something that's sweet and fun than a bagel, right? But yeah, it's like the candy thing, right?
Yeah.
I brought out a bag of candy because my wife was in prep once for a show, and she had a certain amount of calories she had to eat per day, and we went to a movie at the end of the week, and she grabbed, I think it was a bag of the Sour Patch Kids, right?
I love Sour Patch Kids.
And I looked at she was like, at the end of the week, it was happening for a few weeks at a time. I haven't lost weight. Well, she had like a window, like for a couple hours where she could eat whatever she wanted, sort of, right? And she would have that at the movie theater. And I looked at it, and I was like, this has 110 calories 8 times, because there's 8 servings, right? I was like, I was like, Lauren, your deficit for the week is like that much. You just ate all of it,
Yeah.
So it's like, you got to think of it like, I love Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah.
They're really good, right? But you just got to think of it as like, well, how much can I invest in my day right now with that,
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, the way that these advertising the way that they trick people.
Oh, the serving size.
Yes, they get you every time you look at it, and you don't even look, because the servings, I mean, that's in tiny print, but you see the calories, and you're like, oh, okay, I can do this, but.
Yeah.
But
I can have 8 pieces.
Yeah, but you don't realize that 8 pieces is a full serving size. Is when you think like, okay, the whole bag is maybe 100 and whatever calories, but no, the whole bag is maybe 600 or 700 calories.
I think that the bag was
almost
actually
900
calories.
Almost 900, yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely.
And
insane.
it was like this big. It's not a giant bag.
And the packaging, and it is literally meant to trick you. I mean, that's just the way it is. So you do have to be diligent when you're reading this and understand kind of what you're putting into your body, because it can be deceiving.
But in the same note, we can go to Taco Bell, right?
Yeah.
Most people will be like, well, don't go there, don't go to McDonald's. You can go there and you can actually find,
if you're smart
and you think about it, you can find some options that will work for your day. You can do that every day probably if you wanted to.
Yeah. Our favorite lately has been Popeye's blackened chicken, because the macros on that are phenomenal. Like it's just protein. It's like this is great. Anyways.
But we're moving towards fitness, right?
Yeah, exactly. So with that being said, you hear this term also get thrown around. A calorie is a calorie. And I would like to argue that a calorie is not a calorie, because there's so many things that are tied to that, right? That can influence health, right? So because we're saying in order to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit, but not all calories are created equal. So some things that you have to take into consideration is the macronutrient, so protein, fat, carbs, profile of the calorie, the micronutrient profile of the calorie, the satiety index, right?
Yeah.
How full or how much it makes you feel, because you could eat 900 calories of Sour Patch Kids and still be like, I need another bag.
Yeah.
But,
because the calorie is still a calorie, but by eating this calorie, you're going to want more calories.
Yeah,
exactly. And try to eat 900 calories of chicken breasts.
Or potatoes.
You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
Oh my gosh.
Good grief. You're just like, I can't move.
And so I think that these are important things to take into consideration. So I don't know if there's more that you would like to add on to that.
And before you do, I would like to also bring up probably my favorite interview to date still, Dr. Richard Johnson, who wrote The Sugar Fix and Nature Wants You to Be Fat. And we were specifically talking about his book, Nature Wants You to Be Fat, and the mechanism of sugar in the body and this thing that it's turning on, which you probably know a little bit about. And we're just sitting here and I'm like, man, we talk about calories in, calories out. And Dr. Johnson is sitting here telling us, except for when you eat sugar, what happens is it sends your body into this automatic storage mode. So versus you're eating those calories in chicken versus the Sour Patch Kids, what's actually happening? So, I mean, I feel like that ties right into your question.
Yeah, no. I mean, I agree. A calorie, energy expenditure and all that is important, and what we put into our body is very, very important, and calories are not all created equal, and it's important to understand that, because you're right, you can eat a whole bag of Sour Patch Kids and then still be hungry afterwards. Our bodies are made in a way that provide negative feedback or positive feedback, so you have to be able to tune in and tap into those clues to understand. So like you said, you can eat all of these Sour Patch Kids and then still be hungry afterwards. Whereas if you eat, chicken breasts, that is completely different. So being able to tap into those different things and understand, like, hey, I'm hungry because I didn't eat the correct type of calories, or I'm not hungry and I'm full because I ate the correct type of calories. That's all very, very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So diving into kind of the next category is like methods of actually tracking calories. So, and whether or not it's actually important. And I wanted to give a little personal anecdote on this.
Yeah.
I was against tracking calories for me personally for the longest time,
Yeah.
just because I'm busy. I'm like, I got an
one more
ADHD brain
thing to
bouncing
do.
all over
Yeah.
the place. And I was super resistant to it, but like, I just wasn't seeing the progress I was needing. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to give this a try. Downloaded an app, Macrofactor, that got put out recently. It's super good. But like, I found actually for my personality, it was actually something super easy for me to do.
Okay.
And like almost like basically it was down to a science to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, if I just do X, Y, and Z, the weight just went like this. And then now I'm at maintenance and I'm just maintaining
I noticed
exactly
you were
where I
looking
need
trimmer,
to be.
my guy.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Looking good.
Yeah, over the last 3 months, I've lost about 20 pounds.
Good for
Or
you.
not
Yeah.
3 months. I think it was, more like 6 months. I lost about 20 pounds. So not like anything crazy, but just like
But
a very
steady,
slow,
healthy
steady
weight loss.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe we can talk a little bit, and John, you can talk about this from like a fitness profile of like, why is it important to lose weight over a long period of time rather than just like trying to drop it all at once?
Good question.
That is a great question.
That's I'll let you go
Yeah,
in a second.
yeah.
That's an important one with just, I think with just being mindful of understanding like what you're eating, right? With, I think, people they have no clue what they're eating per day, right? Something I've run into with myself is like, you might think you have a calorie deficit for the day, and then you might next day you might think you have another calorie deficit, because you think you're restricting yourself, right? And then you go through a week and you're not losing weight, and you're really upset, right? When I started using calorie trackers myself, I don't recommend people always do that, right? But I do recommend someone like start it, try it, get mindful of what they're eating, because it's so easy once you've done that to go, oh, I only have 500 calories left for the day. I guess I have to cut back a little bit. And it's easier to do that than to just be like unknowingly.
Did I not?
I need to restrict. And you have this constant restriction thing in your head versus like at the end of the day going, I have 900 calories left.
I can do whatever the freak I want.
I can have a box of Sour Patch
And
Kids.
in some cases, you're like, well, maybe I'll be in a 500 calorie deficit at the end of the day.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
I
me
feel
too.
fine and,
Maybe
and
I'm fine.
sated.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that mindfulness of doing that, it really helps you identify which foods as you're going throughout your day are worth it to you.
Yeah.
Because why would I eat that now? Because it took all my like half the calories for the day.
And
versus,
I didn't even enjoy it that much.
Yeah, and it was not that big of a deal versus whatever else you might like.
To tag on that, and then I want to hear your
Yep,
thoughts as
sure.
well, Dr. Jones, is one of my favorite analogies, and the thing that actually finally convinced me to track my calories, at least to give it a go, and I think I'm sold. At this point, I'm sold. But what actually convinced me, Mike Israetel, funny guy, incredibly brilliant guy.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Say hi-
I
say
hope
hi-
you're
say
watching
hi back,
this.
yeah.
If your butlers are watching this, I'm sure they'll relay the message to you. But basically what he said is like trying to lose weight without tracking your calories is like trying to land a plane without any of the instruments. You're flying through fog and you're trying to land a plane without any of the, if you're really skilled and you know what you're doing, you can do it. But like if you're just a first-time pilot, basically having those tools to actually be able to track it, you're going to be able to make that landing a lot easier. You're going to be able to hit that goal a lot easier if you can just track those calories. So anyways, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts, Dr. Jones.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one for me because I'm kind of on the fence.
Yeah.
When I talk to patients, I typically don't initially recommend them to track calories. And there are a couple different reasons behind that. I think it's very easy depending on your personality. Now, some people are great at this and they probably, like you, for
Thrive.
example, you thrive and you do well on this. But other people get very obsessed over this idea. And they don't give themselves grace.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you get the feelings of guilt, surrounding, today I didn't do what I was supposed to do and I feel guilty. And then when you feel guilty, you get this emotional type eating and you get those cravings and then you're in the refrigerator you're in the refrigerator at midnight, like, all right, where's the chocolate,
Yeah.
So initially, depending on the patient and kind of what their personality is, and I get a lot of that from, just kind of discussing what their goals are and what they want. I'm on the fence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for some people, I think it's great. For other people, not so much. And there are a lot of different kind of factors that kind of roll into that. But no, I'm happy that, obviously that you've had the
it
success
worked
that
for
you've
me.
had. Yeah.
Well, and I think that the reason why it worked for me is because I had a very specific goal in mind, right? My goal is hypertrophy, right? So I'm trying to build muscle. I'm trying to get as jacked as possible so that you wonderful people watching this can be like, wow, he's really jacked.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm there yet. But more or less, like it worked for me because it's like I need to make sure I'm getting the protein I need to hit my goals. And so it's a goal oriented, and it's not just like I need to lose weight. It's no, I have a very specific thing that I'm working towards. And so like for other people, other methods might actually be better if some sort of elimination. And it could be that, like, I think that for a lot of people, that's like the easiest thing.
Yeah.
Because like, you know, what are some of the biggest culprits? Right off the top of my head, soda is probably one of the biggest ones, and it's probably the easiest to fix.
Yeah. For
Switching out a Coke with a Diet Coke is literally the easiest thing you can do to lose weight.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe there's other strategies in terms of elimination and that you've seen with your patients that really work well.
Or even better than elimination, switching it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's essentially what you're saying is something that I believe for a long time, which is your health and fitness journey is not one size fits all.
Yeah.
Correct.
Really what matters is what are you going to stick to?
Correct.
Right? There's a lot of paths to this destination. I personally don't believe, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, there's one true and right way there, right?
Correct.
What are you going to stick with?
Yeah.
And so me personally, typically, I can't remember if I said this before we recorded or I've already said it on the recording, so I'll just say it again. But something like calorie counting makes me feel like restricted. Like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, it's just one more thing for me to do, and I don't want to do it. But I did finally at one point start doing it on, an app. And I will say for me, what was beneficial is especially the things that I'm eating really regularly, like a half an avocado or 4 eggs or this ribeye steak or whatever, for me to have an understanding of what the macros and calories were in that thing. Now it's like, now I just have more awareness through my day.
The general shape of your diet.
The vague shape of it. What does it look like? And so I probably would have never known that and approached these things with more awareness and more intentionality, because that's really the thing, right? Is you have to be intentional. You have to be aware. You can't make changes in your habits and your diet and your workouts or lack of them, whatever, if you don't even know where you're going to go. You can't route a path to where you want to go if you don't first know where you are, right? If you're like in your car sitting like whatever and you're like, I need to get to Seattle. The first thing it's going to be like is, where are you right now? Right? And so that for me is what calorie counting was. But I can also really appreciate what you're saying, especially if it's a whole new journey for someone, is it's like, let's figure out what's highest and best use for you now. Let's get you on the track and the roll, and then calorie counting is something that maybe we can work in at some point.
It's a tool
in the toolbox. Let's open this gigantic toolbox and figure out which tools are going to be most impactful for you.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and you mentioned something earlier, Derek, about losing weight rapidly versus...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh,
we
man,
went on a tangent.
Yeah, we did go on a tangent. I just want to make sure... I wanted to make sure I just add a little bit to that, because, that I think that's really, really important. And there are a lot of physiological things that happen in our body that would say whether or not this is good or bad. So I agree with you. Losing weight gradually, continuously over a period of time is much better than rapid weight loss. And the reason is because, for example, our metabolism, the way that our body uses up energy, basically slows down as a mechanism of survival. So our bodies, are amazing in the way that they're made, and they're constantly trying to survive. Yeah. So when you lose weight rapidly and pounds fall off, the body is like, oh my God, there's a problem here. So it's going to shoot out everything that it possibly can to get you to put back on that weight.
Is that why you hit those, what we call set points? You've probably run into that before?
Yes.
With weight loss, where you hit a weight and you feel like you're doing everything the same that you were
Yes.
before, and you're like, why am I sticking at 230?
Yes.
That's that was my weight for a while, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, what's going on?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So what happens is, in our metabolism actually slows down when we start to lose weight as a mechanism to say, no, there's something wrong in our bodies. We need to do something to make sure we're not using up as much energy, because we want that weight back. That's what our bodies are saying to us. And it's important that you understand that. And then secondly, the stress hormones, cortisol being the biggest one. I mean, that's going to be released if you lose weight very rapidly, and it's going to say, let me grab all the fat, everything that I can, to deposit that as much as I can to prevent this loss that's happening. So all these things are kind of working against what your actual goal is. So that's why people who, lose weight pretty quickly, I mean, they're back in this like yo-yo pattern because they're going to regain it back for all the reasons mentioned.
Yeah, and then of course cortisol is also catabolic to muscle.
Yeah,
correct.
You lose that, and
got a whole nother cascade of things. I was going to bring up Mike Israetel again. I'm
glad.
I think I have as big of a crush on him as I do on Huberman.
What?
I don't know.
Why have you not said his name that much? Like,
well, because
prove it is what I'm trying to say.
I guess what I'm saying is, sorry, Huberman. I found a new guy. The last couple of months, I've been listening to him pretty much, not you.
He's got a lot of jokes.
I'm sorry.
So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's a lot funnier than you are. Anyways, but something that he said is that I thought was really insightful is like America doesn't really have a weight loss problem. It has a maintenance problem. So what ends up happening is so many people lose this weight and rapidly come down. Yeah. And then, basically throughout the week, there's like this structure of the week where, during the week, they're trying their best. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to stay in this calorie deficit. And then on the weekends, they let loose too much. And so then they just basically they maintain, but it's not a healthy maintenance. It's like it's they're constantly doing this yo-yo back and forth. Yeah. And he's like, look, the best way to go about doing this, arguably the best way of going about doing this is lose the weight and get down maybe like 2 or 3 to 5 pounds a little bit below where you want to be. Yeah. And then slowly reintroduce it so that food to your body to maybe even be in a slight caloric surplus. Yeah. So that you're able to basically send signals to your body like, you're okay. Right. You're safe. Just like chill out. You're good. It reduces diet fatigue. It reduces all of these danger signals in our brain. The red alert gets turned off. And at a certain point, you're able to then come back down to maintenance. And that's essentially where I've been at for the last 3 months. I've just been I came down and I've been just at maintenance. Yeah. And honestly, I've been enjoying it. It's nice just to be able to chill and be like, I'm really happy where I'm at. And I think that's, again, kind of going back to what you were talking about, Natalie, of mindset. Once you achieve your goal, be happy that you got it, and then just be willing, I guess, to do what it takes to just be like, yeah, I'm happy to just to be here. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I like that approach because, our bodies are meant to survive, and then, any sort of signal that, hey, something's off, you're going to get the opposite effect. So it's important that, you do send those signals to your body, say, hey, you know what, things are okay. And give yourself, like I said, give yourself a little bit of grace. It's okay to have that snack every now and then. It's not a big deal. You're not going to hurt anything.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the ideal, if we're talking about how fast we're losing weight so we don't send our body into that sort of state of shock, danger, Will Robinson, we need to hold on to all these calories. I think we're headed into famine, which I think is what you're describing is kind of what's happening essentially. Yeah. And so to not try, be on this rapid decline, whatever, what is ideal for caloric deficit in a week or a day, depending?
Yeah,
I'm guessing that kind of depends on your existing and starting weight and height and age and all of those things. But if I'm listening and I'm thinking, okay, so then what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. No. So what I recommend to my patients, because you're right, everyone's going to be a little bit different. Everyone has a different starting point. Genetics has to deal, demographic, all these things are really important in that. But I tell people, if you can get to about 1 kilogram per week or so, that's pretty good. And that's not going to signal too many alarms.
That's about 2 pounds.
And it's about 2 pounds.
2.2, right?
Yeah, 2.2.
Oh,
2.2.
I was like, what's a kilogram? What's going on over here?
Yeah.
Weight loss per week?
Per week.
Yeah. I've always heard that 1 to 2 pounds per week.
Yeah. Anything more than that, that's probably going to be a little bit too fast, and you're probably going to end up with some issues. And again, it's going to be really, really hard to stick with, like you mentioned. I mean, if you're having rapid weight loss, that means you're doing something extremely restrictive. And it's going to be hard to stick with that over the long run. And then that's when you start to see the issues with the regain and all those things. So
sounds about right for me too, because and anytime I've tried to do it quickly, I've almost always gained it back,
Yeah.
So for me, it's helpful though, looking at it in a longer period too. There's some, like I said before, there's some days where for some reason I'm not as hungry, not as focused. Maybe I'm more busy, whatever. And by the end of the day, I haven't hardly had anything to eat, and that's okay. Right? I feel good.
Right, listening to your cues.
I'm okay. I'm in a deficit for the day. That's cool. I'm going to lose a little bit, right? Next day, not quite that way, maybe, right? But as long as I'm looking at in kind of a longer period of time, then I'm all right, you know?
Right. We talked about that, I think, before we started recording, the idea of instead of like a daily calorie intake, like calculating what's the weekly calorie intake and like letting it fluctuate. And maybe you have kind of like a fuel restrictive day where it's like, I'm pretty much just on proteins here today with very minimum fats and carbs. And the other day you're like carb feeling, or you're essentially carb cycling or whatever. And you don't even have to do that. But the goal being, look at what the calorie intake is over this period of time. But I would also say, I'm thinking, as a woman, because you're talking about like, I didn't feel, and I didn't really eat very much and I was fine. And I'm like, I notice sometimes just within the phases of my cycle, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to eat everything today. And I like look at the date and I'm like, oh, that makes sense, but it's like not how I would normally eat. And I want to eat things I wouldn't normally eat and everything. And so it's like being aware of what's going in your body. It kind of goes back to what I was saying before, like, paying attention, which I think is just something that we struggle with in general in our society, is to have a level of self-awareness. Everything is so fast. We're bombarded by so much information. It's actually so much work just to be aware of what you're doing on a daily basis. Pay attention to what you're eating, how much sleep you're getting, what kind of workouts you're doing, how your body feels, your hunger cues, how you feel after you eat food, what's your energy level like after you eat something, what's your digestive like, how does your poop look, how often are you pooping? Like, all of these things require a level of attention.
I have a weird vision of someone looking at their poop now. So
doesn't everyone look at their poop?
That's me.
Come
on.
Every
day.
If you don't, you should.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. If you're not looking at your poop, listeners, you need to look.
Yes, especially since I've upped my fiber intake. It's been very interesting to see what comes out.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to tell us a lot, right?
It does.
Yeah.
But we're living in an age where our attention is constantly being pulled at in every single direction. And so I think one of the side effects of that, unfortunately, is that the attention on self and on the things that we need, physically, emotionally, mentally, kind of goes out the wayside. And then here we are in the epidemic that we're in.
Yeah, well, so I wanted to touch on that. Like, just like what you're saying, there's so many things demanding on our attention. And I think that's kind of when I initially, earlier this year, when I first kind of really like, I need to lose weight, I started one of our GLP-1s, Semaglutide. And I remember when I first took it, like I grew up, like my family called me the human vacuum. we would go to IHOP, and I have a family of, I'm like one of 6 kids. Yeah. Right. And so like we would go and everyone would be eating food, and I would inhale my food. And then I would just sit and wait for the stragglers because I knew that they would be coming along. I'd just be like, okay, are you going to finish that? And then I would take it and I would just inhale food at alarming rates.
You were growing.
But that stuck with me. Like I ate very quickly, and I would eat very large quantities of food. And like for a long time, I could get away with it. It finally caught up with me, and I wasn't in tune with my satiety cues. So when I first took semaglutide, I remember I went out on a date. I think it was like our anniversary with my wife, actually, to like this Italian restaurant. I got this tiny little lasagna thing that previously would have been an appetizer at that point. Yeah. I remember I finished it, and I'm like, I'm full. Yeah. What the heck? This is like the first time that ever, it was an epiphany to me. I was just like, this is amazing. And so just being able to have that tool was absolutely incredible. And maybe we can dive into this from a fitness side. Like so many people in the fitness space are like, this is cheating. And then from a medical side, like this is incredible because it's like almost a cure at this point for obesity. Like I'm not going to say it is, but like.
But you just did.
It's the closest thing of like, it's a freaking revolution when it comes to weight loss management. So let's hear from you guys.
You want to go first? Or?
Yeah. Well, when I heard heard these came out, I remember thinking to myself like, so wait, like I've had patients coming into me. I'm not a doctor, but patients. We had a medical clinic, and they would come, and I was a diet coach. They come to me and say they wish that just the magic pill existed, for years, and then all of a sudden this came out. Like, whoa, wait. The magic pill is here, and maybe that's not necessarily what it is, but that's what it feels like.
It's like the closest thing we have to
for sure.
it. Yeah.
Mike Isertel said something along those lines. It's like, I mean, if you can take something that's going to kind of take that part out of like having to think about that as much, and that's what it does, is that, you're just not thinking about it as much.
Well, and it goes back to your point of like the busy professionals. We all know very successful people that are very successful in their careers, very successful with their families, but don't have the time and attention to put into their weight loss, right? What they need. And the GLP-1s for them now takes that off the table. So now like it takes the willpower out of it and just allows them to get into a more healthy state without sacrificing time with their family or without sacrificing their productivity at work. And so it really is. It's amazing. It's such an amazing tool.
It's one less thing to kind of think about in a way. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, you want to be mindful of your health, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But that willpower part
makes it a lot easier.
Makes it a lot easier, yeah. And you still have to have the willpower. There's people who still don't lose very much weight or don't lose weight.
And you can cheat the medication.
Yeah.
Like if you eat enough calorically dense foods, you can still gain weight on the medication if you're not doing what you need to be doing.
You certainly can out cheat. You can cheat anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You guys must be in my brain and my mind or whatever, because you mentioned a few things that I'm just like, man, that is key. The idea of intuitive eating, that is such a big deal, especially nowadays with all the distractions in life that we have with, phones, iPads, TV, all these different things, that intuitive eating is key.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying today's podcast. I just wanted to take a quick break because if you're listening, you probably know what we do here at Invigor Medical Podcast, but maybe not what we do at InvigorMedical.com. So let me introduce us. At Invigor, we provide prescription strength treatments and peptides for weight loss, sexual health, and lifestyle optimization. Every treatment plan is carefully prescribed by licensed doctors and sourced from legitimate pharmacies. You don't ever need to buy questionable research chemicals again. And bonus, as a podcast listener, you get a 10% discount on your first treatment plan with code podcast10 at invigormedical.com. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
Yeah, do
this.
it. Preach, Dr. Jones.
There are some practical tips that I do want to share with everyone, to be more intentional about the foods and the way that we eat, because this, I think, is key and can really change your life. So one, listening to the cues of your body. Okay. Understanding for sure when you are hungry. Okay. And hunger is one of those things that can be an emotional thing or it can be a physical thing. It's okay to eat, and you should eat when you're physically hungry. That just makes sense, right? You're sitting and you got this slow progression, this slow build up of these feelings of rumbling in your stomach and a little bit of cramping. You're like, okay, I'm hungry. It makes sense. You need to nourish your body. Your body is telling you, hey, I'm hungry. I need energy. That's fine. But you also need to understand, hey, when I'm emotional, I get these cues and I get these pains and these feelings that I need to eat something. And that is when you need to kind of push through and realize that, hey, this may be an emotional time that I'm having, and maybe I'm not as hungry as I think I am. And at those moments, you need to just kind of push through. If you need to go work out, go work out. If you need to talk to a friend, talk to a friend. If you need to do something that gets your mind off.
Drink a glass of water.
Drink a glass of water. If you need to do something that gets your mind off of that. So that's number one. Number two, I would pause and just think about what you're about to eat. Just think about it.
Mindful eating.
Mindful eating.
I do want to. I kind of riff on that a little bit because there is also a difference between hunger and cravings.
Yes.
Right. And the key way that you can tell the difference is if you're hungry, you will literally eat anything.
I tell my kids this all the time.
If we get kind of morbid here, people that have been in starvation periods will eat shoes.
Yeah.
They'll eat like the leather belts that they have. They will literally anything that might have caloric value, they will eat. And so like if you're in that situation where like, man, I want to eat something. If you then say, am I hungry enough to eat an apple? Yeah. If you're like, and then it's like you're not hungry, you are craving donuts, you're craving this, you're craving that, and that's a really good signal to be like, okay, let me do something else, let me figure out how to get around this craving. Yeah,
for sure.
Did you have more points?
I want to hear.
One more. Okay.
Let me just give one last point. So how nice is it to order Uber Eats or whatever it is that you do, have it come to the door, you go sit and you hop on the Netflix and then you start eating and watching whatever series it is that you're eating. And next thing you know, you look down and the food is gone and you have like no idea what you ate, how much you ate, and it's just gone. So I want to challenge everyone, when you go home and you eat dinner, turn off the TV, turn off the phone if you can. turn off iPads, all the distractions that are around you, and really focus in on your senses with the food.
Oh, yeah.
Visual,
it's so good.
listening, the texture, and just enjoy that moment with the food. And you realize, hey, you know what? This is good. I'm not full anymore. I don't need to keep eating. I can stop. Cravings are gone because you're really, really getting in tune with what you're eating, how you're eating.
Who I cannot remember her name right now.
Kim Shapira.
Kim Shapira.
I was literally thinking about the same
I think
person.
about Kim. If you're out there, I think about this conversation we had
She still makes great content.
Yeah, and I follow her on Instagram, and this is something she talked about. Like one of her, pillars is take half the amount of food that you would normally take.
Eat
and
that.
then
See
eat
where
that
we're at.
and then wait 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's wild how much more in tune you get with your satiety cues. And the other thing that she said was also about eliminating distractions at the dinner table. And what clicked for me in that episode, I was like, we always push having family dinner as something that's like an emotional well-being thing. But I'm like, oh my God, actually, it's good for my physical health too. And since that episode, Kim, I have had way more intentional sit-down dinners with my kids. Yeah. And it it's just such a high impact.
It does. It makes a huge difference.
In general. Yeah. But mindful eating, that's even something that I'm really trying to be focused on right now. I started my New Year in October, by the way. I hate January New Year, so I'm officially, you guys can say Happy New Year to me if you'd like.
Happy New Year.
Oh,
Happy New Year.
you guys,
I hope you have a
thank you.
good.
That's so nice.
Yeah, I'm super excited for you.
I am too. But one of the things that I am focused on more is mindful eating. It's, which I think it's easy to think it's like, well, what am I eating? Which that's part of it. But the other thing of it is I'm like, I'll be in the middle of eating sometimes and I'm chewing and I'm like, I might have like almost 3 bites in my mouth right now. Like I'm just and I'm especially if it's the middle of the workday and I'm like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Or I'm in a lunch meeting and I'm like, my turn to eat while they talk kind of thing. And I'm like, what if like, I didn't take another bite until the bite I have in my mouth is chewed and swallowed. Yeah. What if as I'm chewing, I'm like feeling gratitude for the food I'm eating and really enjoying and savoring the meal?
Yes.
You know, and how much less am I going to eat as well and just like feel my body being fueled by what I'm eating. We're so fast paced. We're so distracted by so many things. And I am ashamed to admit how many meals in front of the TV I've eaten with my kids. Yeah. Like so many. And that's fun to do every once in a while. But it hadn't really occurred to me until the conversation with Kim that was actually negatively impacting my physical health. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Touching on the thought that I had, there's I'm a big foodie. Like I love food, which is also part of the problem, right?
Which is fine too.
It totally is fine. But there's a food channel that I follow. His channel's Internet Shaquille. And one of the things, it's actually one of his most recent videos he did about plating, of like how to plate your food, which you think, plating food, like what can that actually do? That's just what fancy restaurants do. But he's like, no, there's actually things that go into, like if you present your food in specific ways, and like go watch a video, it's phenomenal. It's very simple things that you can do even with a sandwich, cutting it on a bias, stacking it on top of each other to get some visual height, like getting something where it's like visually appealing. It's almost like you scratch that craving itch a little bit before you even consume it. So even learning some really minor things, even if that's just like putting a thing of ketchup on there and doing the smear with the ketchup, like I'm not judging, have fun with it. And really it's sometimes little stuff like that can actually have a really big effect.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I know we wanted to talk a little bit about some of John's like favorite like Mythbusters misconceptions.
Yes.
Let's dig into
myths.
like some stuff that people are always believing or talking to you about, and you're just like,
eat your heart out.
Well, what I did is I went to ChatGPT and asked it to give me a whole bunch of myths, and I found the ones I agreed with the most, basically. Right? Okay. But it was funny because it like listed them almost in order, like the ones that I agree with the most.
Oh, cool.
The ones I've heard the most, because I've been around fitness stuff for a long time. But one of the ones is that is kind of can be actually sort of true but not true, depending on how you look at it, right? Is that eating at night will cause weight gain, right? So this goes two directions, right? One, for me, eating at night will cause some weight gain. That's a myth though, right? So, but for me, eating at night will cause weight gain, but why? Well, because I'm just eating a lot of extra calories that I shouldn't be eating. I've already had most of my calories for the day at that point, and so I shouldn't be doing that. But the point that we're making is that you can eat your calories at night and it won't make any difference if you ate them at night or if you ate them in the morning
Well,
or if you ate them in the middle of the day,
Can we clarify on this too? Because I'm surprised to hear like this is a myth that eating at night. What's night? Because like everything that I've heard and read is like 2-hour window before bed, don't eat. Like not only just for weight loss, but for better sleep and digestion and all of those things, that eating too close to bedtime will impact all of that. So now I'm like, wait, it's a myth? Like maybe you're talking about specifically for weight loss.
Yeah,
as it pertains to weight loss.
Yeah, because we're mainly been talking about weight loss, right? And so as just a general rule, we talked about this before. We said calories in, calories out.
Mm-hmm.
Calorie is a calorie.
Calorie is a calorie. Where we talked about the one side of it where a calorie is not just a calorie in the sense that like it can affect you a certain way, right? Mm-hmm. But this is on the calorie side of things. Where,
Gotcha.
Where if you have your calories in the morning, in the middle of the day, if you had all of them there's something called the what is it? I can't remember the name of the diet, but they eat everything at night. Actually,
Yeah,
they purposely. It's called the warrior diet, I think.
Oh,
Warrior?
And they purposely eat everything all at night. So they're doing it's just intermittent fasting.
Well,
Right.
and if you think about it, that actually makes sense because like what is the system that takes care of the rest and digest? It's the parasympathetic system. Me nerding out.
No, I
Let's
love
do it.
This
Go,
is
yeah,
good
go
stuff,
for it.
though.
But essentially,
Yeah.
like when you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, that's the rest and digest. And like literally, when you eat at night, it's like so there isn't necessarily anything wrong with eating at night. It's the number of calories. But let's be 100% honest. When you are eating at night, it's not an apple. It's not
Not
a
a salad,
salad.
yeah.
You are digging into that freezer and saying, where the heck are those Ben and Jerry's? I'm going to eat this
Yeah,
entire
exactly.
carton,
Yep.
So like more typically that's the thing where people get hung up.
It's because you get additional calories than what you should have had for the day, right?
Yeah,
So that's what it comes down to.
Exactly. Yeah. I've got all these people in my head. Mike Israel and Huberman.
They called that schizophrenia.
Don't tell us that.
Please
Don't
stop talking.
Please stop talking.
Anyways, but like one of the things is there's a kind of a pyramid of like what's the most important when it comes to fitness is like at the very base, the most important thing is just like the number of calories. And then above that is macros, above that is micros, and then above that you have hydration and supplements and things like that. Mm-hmm. But like really it's so imperative that it's just like don't exceed if you're calorie deficit, if you burn 2,000 calories in a day, if you're in a calorie deficit of 1,900, if you go above that, you're going to be either maintaining or gaining weight. And so, like I know, for example, Huberman, he actually prefers to put his carbs at the end of the day because he personally feels like it actually allows him to relax. It releases tryptophan and other things like that. So where he feels like if he eats because I think we've all been there. We've had a really big carb-loaded lunch, and then we feel like just like
nap
passing
time.
out.
So hard. I want to nap so bad.
Exactly. And so he preferentially puts all of his carbs at the end of his day, so that way he can sleep better.
You also are going to have an insulin spike and then drop, which is going to make you more lethargic.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So there's things to take into consideration.
Well, I know we're
about.
talking more specifically about weight loss, and I know that's the focus, but I think it's just like sleep is so important to weight loss, and I think that's one of the themes that I've like felt reiterated over and over again on all of these guests that we've had for like 2 years now, like almost a year and a half, whatever it is, like how important sleep is. And so what and when you're eating at the end of your day is going to impact sleep. And let's be realistic, if we're exhausted and strung out because we don't have sleep, how much harder is it to make those good food decisions the next day, to drag your butt to the gym, to like be present with your kids, whatever it is? If we're not sleeping well, all of that, it's just this snowball effect that makes it become much, much more difficult. And so sometimes we get focused on this, like, well, I'm going to eat these foods and I'm going to eat them in this time window. I'm going to do all these. And it's like, okay, what's the building block? Are we getting enough sleep?
Yeah.
Like, can we so that's kind of where I was thinking about.
I will say two important considerations because I just thought of these. Number one, eating food can dampen the release of growth hormone. So if you eat a lot of food right before you go to sleep, that can cause growth hormone to be blunted.
I thought I remember hearing Lane Norton talk about that.
Is that a myth?
Well, it's not a myth, but I thought I remember hearing him say something about it not being a significant thing to worry about, But I'm not trying to quote him, so
I can't remember my other thing. So
anyway,
we'll continue.
No, but that's a thing to think about. Yeah.
Did you? Chime in. I was
I mean, you guys kind of already hit on all the points, but I think there's nothing really nocturnal with the way that we metabolize calories that would suggest that there's a problem with eating at night. Now, I agree with you for sure. I mean, if you have a big meal at night, try to go eat, a huge meal and then lay down. I mean, you're going to feel horrible. You're going to feel bloated. You're going to feel full. You get a lot of reflux from, having that sphincter of your esophagus open and having all that food. You're just not going to feel good. And the sleep's not going to be as great. And then there's going to just a snowball effect. So this is more of a, kind of a holistic approach and making sure that, if your energy's good, you sleep well, you putting the right foods in, it's going to prove to be better for you in the long run, just in general.
I remember my other point. The other point was if you go to bed and you're super hungry and it wakes you up in the middle of the night, you're not going to get good sleep. If you're waking up like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. That's going to make things disrupted as well. So those are both things to take into consideration.
I'm glad you touched on sleep anyway, because if someone can't lose weight, one of the first things you should look at is if they're sleeping well.
Yeah.
Right, 100%. Because it affects your hunger throughout the day as well, and your patterns, the things you're going to do.
And cortisol levels, which then preferentially stores fat, and it's a whole cycle.
Yeah.
It is a whole cycle, man. That's why, again, it's a holistic approach to health and wellness in general. I mean, you can't it's easy to get pigeonholed into one specific area and you just want to see this, but you have to look at the totality of the person, because we are whole beings at the end of the day. And we have all these different components to us, and it's important to address each and every one. And if you want to get that maintained, sustainable weight loss.
Myth number 1, busted.
We killed it.
All right, go.
The next one, I'll probably skip over one here, but you need to do cardio. I think we kind of touched on some of these. You need to do cardio to lose weight. That kind of goes along with calories again, but something I learned in the last few years, right, is like the hardcore attitude I used to have of fitness when you're younger, and that's how most younger people are, I think, when they get into it. No, I did cardio for 2 hours or something, is how much effort am I putting into each activity I'm doing, what's the output, right? Cardio is one of those things that, depending on how you're doing it, can be a lot of effort. And it hurts your knees, your feet, or whatever, especially as you get older. All these systemic things that can happen to you that make it really difficult to keep doing it, right? Versus just standing up, going for a walk, moving around more. Those things can make a huge difference in comparison. Like, I've noticed every time we go, like, for instance, when we go to Vegas, I come back leaner every time, right? And I'm eating like whatever is there every single time. And it's usually 3 meals, giant piece of pizza or something, and with some cake or something, right? I come back home and I lost weight because we've walked 20 or 30,000 steps a day while we're there. And so just the moving around is huge, So
I think that there's a couple of important things to actually soundly bust this myth that cardio is required. I think that just like having a what's called NEAT, right? The non-exercise thermogenesis, which is just a fancy way of saying everything that you do that's not exercise that burns calories.
Right.
The best way to kind of measure your daily activity is just the number of steps that you take. And the general recommendation, the one that Kim Shapira and many others recommend, is 10,000 steps, which is what I aim for. I normally have my tracker watch to try to get the 10,000. I fall within the 8,000 to 10,000 range. But like hitting those steps is a really good first step to say, am I burning enough calories? But I think that the other side of this is that like so many people are like, oh, this donut has 800 calories. So that means I'm going to have to run however many miles to actually burn this off. And that is such a backwards way of looking at it. At the end of the day, you can't outrun your diet. You just can't, period.
Just like a visual image.
Dude,
running, and there's chasing you.
There's this channel
behind you.
Cheeseburger.
There's this channel that I absolutely love. It's 2 buff dudes, and that's the name of the channel. And like one of the guys has McDonald's, and he's like throwing him in his mouth, and then it has Ronald McDonald like chasing after him with a knife, and he's just like running for his life. It's hilarious. But at the end of the day, like diet. This is maybe another myth, but I think it ties into this. Diet is fundamentally way more important for you to lose weight than any kind of exercise you can do. It's if it was a ratio, I'd say probably about 80% of your focus should be on diet if you're trying to lose weight, because the amount of physical output that you can actually do isn't going to change anything. And actually, there have been some studies done recently that even if you do increase weight or increase your exercise, your body is so smart and kind of fundamentally not lazy. That's got a lot of judgment, but like it wants to stay with us within a certain calorie range.
Yeah.
That even if you increase the amount of calories you burn through exercise earlier on the day, it will force you to basically calm down later on, so that you basically net the same number of calories every single day.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that was a little bit of a rant, but
I love when you rant.
Also, and you probably experience this a lot, right? When you're really heavy, what do you tell someone when they're like they're obese, right? They're morbidly obese. Go exercise, right? And it's like even the thought of it is just,
it can be painful.
It sucks. It really sucks. And I've been like 50 pounds. I've actually been like 50 pounds overweight before. Well, I'm kind of a little bit overweight right now.
That's okay.
But
a lot of that's muscle.
But even with me, like
I look up to you. You're
it
very
sucks.
strong.
Even just even going to the gym and you like the way I feel like I'm not who I am when I'm not, and then I show up to a public place, and I've been in really good shape in my past. I show up at a public place, and it's like, am I in a fat suit? That's how I feel, right? Like I'm not presenting who I really am, and so there's like the psychological aspect of like showing up to do exercise and you feel like you look ridiculous, right? And then also just how you feel while you're doing it, not psychologically but physically, right? I brought my parents to the gym once when I was a young trainer, and I put them through this like grueling workout, and I looked back, I'm like, I was such an idiot. You know? It was so bad, because then they're like, and then they didn't want to work out anymore. It was like that was the worst thing I could have done to them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And then my dad not from then on, but he's always been kind of this way, but he's like, you don't lose weight at the gym. That's not what, so he had a bad attitude about the gym.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some things about,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, going to the gym can be intimidating for anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're like me, I'm a little smaller, but I'm fierce when I go to the gym.
I believe it.
So I mean, it can be intimidating for anyone. So I mean, I tell people all the time, you have to just, even if it's not going to the gym, you just have to find something that's enjoyable, movement that's enjoyable.
Right.
It should not feel like you're on punishment for having to go. If it feels like you're on punishment, you're not going to keep it up.
Right.
So you just need to find some sort of movement that you enjoy, that you wouldn't mind doing, on a regular basis.
Something I've noticed too. Every once in a while, I'll be driving down the street and I see someone who's pretty overweight, running or walking or something, and I don't want to sound judgy, but there's sometimes I want to get out of the car and be like hype them up,
Right.
because the people, they don't want to show up, and when they can show up to do something like that, whether it's like barely moving at all, but they're doing something,
takes
it's
way
like
more effort.
they need a pat on the back, and they need to have
Absolutely.
everyone supporting that. So
for me, I've had this interesting shift mentally surrounding workouts in the last few years. And I mean, everybody's different what they need for motivation, but for me, I've really detached it from being about weight loss.
Yeah.
Like for me, exercise is about my mental health. It's about my level of productivity in a day, my brain power.
Yep.
It's about my physical energy. It's about how well I'm sleeping. It's about my mobility. It's about aches and pains. It's about all of these. It's about playing with my grandkids one day when I have them.
Self-care.
It's not about my scale. Yeah. I have attached what my weight is and what my body shape is to the food that I eat. Now I can improve my composition, and I want to be muscular and build some muscle back for sure. But for me, it's been very helpful to really make that divorce. And me going to the gym and getting a workout in is not about what the scale says or about the size of my pants.
Amen.
And so then just let go of it and let it be something else. And now it feels like a gift to myself instead of this task that I need to complete that's torturous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I have, there's a guy here who comes to me every once in a while talking about asking me for fitness advice. And at one point he's like, is running good for me? And I'm just like, do you like running?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, not really. I'm like, you really shouldn't do things you hate.
Yeah.
Don't do things you hate. And that's just a general good rule for life, for anything. But especially when it comes to fitness, I love what you said. Do something that you love. So if you play basketball, go play basketball.
Just get moving.
If you want to roller skate, like it's the 80s, go do that.
Yeah.
My boyfriend loves to run. I think he's crazy. I hate it. He even loves to run in the cold, and I'm like, that hurts my head just thinking about it. But I love lifting. He doesn't love lifting, but I'm like, what matters is he's getting out in there and moving, and I'm getting out there and moving.
That's
you know?
right. And I think this comes back to the consistency, right? Anything, if you love to do something and you make it part of your routine, not only are you gifting this to yourself, you're going to continue to do that because you love doing it. You know, it's just it's fundamental. It's natural.
It is. It's a thank you to your body for being able to do what you love to do, and you should look at it as a gift for sure. There's one thing I want to mention about the cardio thing. When I see people going really, really hard in the gym with the cardio and they're like burning all these calories and calories and calories, you know what happens at the very end of that once they go home? They are extremely hungry.
Yeah.
And then you know what they say? Oh, well, I can have a little bit more of this.
I deserve this.
I deserve this because
because
I just burned all of these extra calories. So then they essentially end up eating what they just burned or overeating because they're so hungry after they just burned all these calories with cardio. So I'm not saying cardio is bad. It's great for you. It's great for the cardiovascular system and all of that.
Absolutely.
But you do have to keep in mind that, you're going to be burning a lot of energy and you're going to require more energy. And your body's going to let you know that you need all these extra calories based off of what you just burned. So just something to keep in mind.
Myth. I'm wondering, I don't think it's on the list, debunk, because I've heard this before, like within 30 minutes of your workout, like it was hard, intense, whether it was lift, run, whatever, within 30 minutes, it's kind of like free pass on the food. Whatever you eat, it's just instantly going to get used for energy. Have you heard this before?
Anabolic window.
That good old anabolic window. Yeah, we used to believe we even threw creatine into the mix of that, and like you need the super high.
It was like red
glycemic
alert.
index sugars, and then you would get the creatine because it's going to shuttle it into the cells, and that's not true at all, right? Because you can creatine's great for you, but
maybe there's a maybe there's some kind of effect of like if you can get your protein shortly after your workout, there might be some marginal benefit to that.
Yeah, the studies show that it's another statistically insignificant difference between whether you ate it all here or there. If you have, like I said before, like your body has a certain amount of glycogen stored up. Your liver stores like around 300, 400 calories, I think. Alone, right, with glycogen. That's really quickly utilized energy. Muscles store a bunch of glycogen as well. And as the body needs energy, you have like probably about a full day's worth of carbs usually stored up in your body, right? That you can really quickly be put into the bloodstream and used. And so when people think about how that works, right, you can't think of it as like one thing I'm doing right now is going to make this happen,
right?
That comes back down to calories again,
Exactly.
Right, but what I'm trying to get at is if I get a Big Mac on my way home from the gym is the real question.
This is a personal question. Not for her, but for a friend of hers.
No, for a friend, for sure. But yeah, that question of like, oh, well, I'm within this 30-minute window after my workout, so I can eat whatever, and it basically, nuts out. Do you know what I mean? Have you heard that?
I think this is where it comes back to like, where the phrase is a calorie is a calorie, I think is important. So like, it's like, can I eat this? Is this healthy? Can I do it during this time? It's like, well, what is your net caloric balance for the day? And if it's over, then you're going to be in a caloric deficit. If it's over, then you're going to be in a caloric surplus. If it's under, then you're going to be in a caloric deficit.
Well, like we said before, or we haven't said on this podcast, but you burn like the afterburn effect is like 6 to 15% or something like that. So you burn an extra, after 500 calorie workout, maybe 80 calories additional after.
Right?
Yeah.
So
so not super significant.
But that is I would say a myth that there's not kind of like there's not a free zone of calories at any part of the day, right?
Right.
There's no part of the day where it's like, well, because I just worked out really hard, they go into the ether. You know what I mean?
I think they go in the same place my email goes when
your body will probably respond pretty well to high glycemic type stuff and things because you just burned a ton of glycogen. It's going to push that right back into the cells again, right?
Yeah.
And you'll feel satisfied and good and stuff. So it's just person to person, right?
Should we go do we have time for one more?
Yeah, let's do one more myth and then
pick a good one, John.
Let me find a good one.
I know. I was going to say, don't end us on a dud.
I think this is a good one that goes along with what you're kind of saying a little bit. But carbs are the enemy, and I wanted to touch on insulin too, a little bit, right? So carbs are the enemy, and when I was younger, it was fat that was the enemy.
Oh yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
and I guess there was like a war. And
like
another
visual from
captains
between carbs
and
the
fat fighters got together and
they
gathered on the battlefield of the diet.
Yeah, so it's like you can't be fat one, I guess. And now carbs are the enemy, and we love fat.
They're planning their counterattack.
Yeah, they are.
So And maybe touching on insulin a little bit.
Yeah,
Should we go into that?
Let's do it.
Dive into it.
Dive.
So first of all, carbs are not the enemy,
Not
right?
the enemy.
You said that, right?
Yep. No, I agree 100%. I think, these trends have kind of been going on for years. I mean, I think in the 90s, it was all about fat, stay away from fat. Now we've kind of transitioned, stay away from carbs. So, it's kind of a cycle. Carbs are necessary. I mean, you need carbs. You need carbs for energy. They're important. Carbs can be great for letting you know that you're full. Carbs are great for all the fiber that they provide, regulating your bowel habits. People are trying to stay away from carbs, of course, because they're trying to get to this area of ketogenic, where they're breaking down ketosis, where they're breaking down all this fat in there. So they're restricting all these carbs to get to this area where that their body's just using fat for fuel. And I mean, that's kind of the point. But again, it has its side effects of not being, not having the.
Well, I think of it as in the same way as calories. Like,
Yeah.
what's the, because it's like, and I don't like the term good carbs and bad carbs, whatever. But like, what's the quality of the carb that
Correct,
you're eating?
yeah.
And
Correct.
does this think this is where you're going to tie into it? What's it doing to your blood sugar levels?
Yes.
Well, and that's an important distinction to make too, as far as like whether that is good or bad.
Right.
Because a lot of people say it's bad.
What does that mean?
I think
Are
they're.
calories moral?
I think I think it just depends on how you look. Like we talked about, like if you're eating something and it affects you in a way that it's going to change your behavior a certain way, this way or that way, then that's something to think about, right?
Yeah.
But insulin is not bad. Insulin,
Right.
if you're talking to Derek, insulin's great right now because he's trying to build muscle. And if you don't have insulin, then you're not anabolic, right? You need to eat, and insulin is basically a hormone that shuttles nutrients into the cells so that they can then be burned, actually, right? So they can be used, right? So if you don't have that, it's not happening. Glucagon is this goes into the GLP-1s, right? Glucagon-like peptides, right? Is the hormone that kind of does the opposite and pulls nutrients from the cells. So I think the myth is that with insulin, right, is that if I have an insulin spike, that I'm in a storage mode. And I'm going to store. Well, you have to have calories to store, right?
Yeah, there's a balance.
And so regardless of what your insulin levels do throughout the day, if you had X amount of calories, right, your insulin will have only have risen and fallen a certain amount, right, based on that total amount of calories. So if I ate all my carbohydrates in the morning, I'd have a really big, insulin spike, and it would come down and keep on coming down for the rest of the day.
And that might affect how you feel.
Yeah, in that moment, overall, I've had the exact amount of insulin spike as if I would have broken it up over 3 meals.
Yeah.
And so the problem with elevated insulin all the time when it comes to like diabetics is that it's elevated all the time because they're eating too many calories. And over time, their body builds a tolerance for that. And then it takes more and more and more.
Resistant.
They get
And they gain weight.
desensitized to the insulin.
So insulin can be bad if you have constantly elevated insulin, but you have to differentiate between a huge spike and a drop, and then you have low insulin, and now you've had this long period of time where you're sensitizing to it again, right? Versus a bunch of tiny meals where you're having small spikes where you're not desensitizing very much because the spikes are smaller, but you're also not having long periods where you're desensitizing. So the net effect of insulin, as long as your calories are where they should be, is essentially the same.
Right, because the issue isn't really high insulin levels, right? The issue is high blood sugar levels, right? Is
Correct.
that right? And one of the ways that I first had it described to me essentially is like, well, hey, you have this meal, you have protein, you have your fats, you have your carbs or whatever, but you have too much of all of them or too much of the sugars or whatever. Well, if sugar stays in your bloodstream for too long, you die, which insulin is the mechanism that gets it out of your bloodstream, right?
Correct. Yeah,
So if your body's doing it all trying to get this stuff, like we're either going to turn this into energy or we're going to store it, but the focus is we need to get this sugar out of here. This is dangerous. So that's the focus first, right? And
Correct.
so what are you going to say?
I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt
No,
you,
not at
but
all.
I was going to say, I talked to Emily Gold-Mears, who's one of our first people
remember.
that we had forever ago. She explained it kind of like when you have sugar in your bloodstream, it's almost like the cells that's carrying it almost becomes like a burnt caramel, like very sharp
yummy.
and jagged. So it can when it says it can cause a lot of damage, it actually becomes like imagine like
Interesting.
little shards basically running through and it can just like wreak havoc. Which is really bad. So sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. It's just I think it's an interesting distinction because we're like obviously the insulin is correlated to the blood sugar, right? But I think it plays into what you were saying, like the insulin spike is not bad. right? And so I don't know, what would you say to that about being aware of carbs, the role that they play? Because what we're trying to say is carbs are not the enemy.
Yeah.
Well, and right before, bodybuilders take insulin, right? They do it on purpose because, and these
some
dudes,
of them do.
some of them do, and
Some
well,
of the
the
enhanced
biggest,
ones, yeah.
the biggest dudes all do it. Pretty much.
Interesting.
Sorry, guys.
Myth debunked.
HGH, that trend. Anyway,
There's a whole
there's a
group
whole
of
list
people
of things,
that are
right?
doing that.
Yeah.
They take it, and they're eating a lot of food, but they're extremely anabolic. They're on anabolics, right? And they taking testosterone and everything else, right? And when they get that at elevated insulin, with that exogenous, insulin, it's helping to shuttle nutrients into the cells, and muscle is cells and fat are cells, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a distinction there as well. So that's kind of why, insulin, and by the way, some of those guys become diabetic, and they have some really
develop a resistance.
Yeah, it's not good to do that if you're especially exogenous, but yeah. So insulin on its own is not a bad thing, even for fat, right? Mm-hmm. It can be really important for building muscle, right? And it's just you think of insulin and glucagon is basically just like they're just moving things around. That's it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, carbs for sure not the enemy. We need carbs. Carbs are important for just everyday life, digestion. It's important to get fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Those are going to be high in carbs, and they're going to provide you with the nutrients that you need, the vitamins.
Great sources of fiber.
Yeah, the fiber, all those things that are important, and you don't want to be walking around constipated because you're refusing to eat some carbs. So then you'll have to come see me.
Yeah,
and
right.
I'll be taking out your colon. So
And now fruit has a different effect on insulin. It doesn't really affect insulin very much. So.
yeah, so that's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Hello,
my gosh.
Dr. Jones. I'm here for you to take out my
like
colon.
You do it so well. Oh my gosh, we've way gone over time. We might even have to break this up into
we've
2
gone
episodes.
forever.
That being said, though, I think that this is a topic. This conversation is going to be relevant to so many of the people we're
it's
listening
gonna be
to,
phenomenal.
and I'm grateful to have kind of the 2 sides of the coin here between the 2 of you, like the medical, the fitness, and you guys did some overlap there as well. We could keep going, ladies and gentlemen, but out of respect for your time and our schedules, we're going to wrap this one up. So I'll just say thank you to my lovely co-host Derek. Always a pleasure.
Yep.
Dr. Jones.
My pleasure.
And John.
Thank you.
Sorry, that was so sad. Like and John. Wah, wah, wah,
Yeah.
wah.
Well, thank you.
Thanks,
That's
guys.
awesome.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Invigor Medical Podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, you can support us by liking and subscribing.
Your feedback matters, so feel free to share questions or future episode ideas in the comment section.
For more information about our prescription strength treatments for weight loss, ED, and overall wellness, all from qualified doctors and reputable pharmacies, visit us at invigormedical.com. And don't forget to use code PODCAST10 for a 10% discount on your first treatment plan. Until next time, stay well.